Hello, my name's Mary and I'm a teacher of English and Arabic. This video tutorial is to help learners of English understand the difference between two verb tenses, the present perfect and the past simple. The present perfect is the verb has or have with the past participle, and sometimes people call this the third form of the verb. For example, I have lived in London for 5 years. Past simple would be I lived in London for 5 years, and sometimes people call this the second form of the verb. These two verb tenses have different meanings and uses, and learners often get them confused. One reason for this confusion is that learners sometimes don't have an equivalent of the present perfect in their first language, or if they do, then it might be used in a completely different way. Another reason is that often when we teach learners the difference between the present perfect and the past simple, we give them lots of rules, which makes it really difficult to remember when you're speaking which verb you should be choosing. Instead, I think it's much more helpful to focus on the context. So for example, I live in London now, so would it be better for me to say I have lived in London for 5 years or I lived in London for 5 years? In this case, it's better to say I have lived in London for 5 years because I'm still here now. We can define the present perfect as a present tense, which gives the opportunity for change, development or continuity. For example, if I say I've lived in London for 5 years and I want to continue living here for another 3, it makes sense. However, if I say I lived in London for 5 years, that means that I now live somewhere different and I can't continue the action. Here's another situation. I went on holiday recently to Sicily and I met some travellers who went to Mount Etna, and they were talking about their trip yesterday. So is it better for them to say we have been to Mount Etna or we went to Mount Etna? In this situation, you need to say we went to Mount Etna yesterday, because yesterday is definitely in the past and you can't continue the action. On the other hand, if it's Wednesday and you want to talk about this week, we can say we've been to Mount Etna this week, because there's the opportunity to go again or maybe go somewhere else, so you can continue, develop or change the action. Sometimes I've needed to correct students when they've used the past simple to talk about somebody because it gives the meaning that that person is dead and that's not what they wanted to say. For example, if we're talking about Shakespeare, we can say Shakespeare wrote many plays, because unfortunately Shakespeare is no longer alive and can't write any more plays. In contrast, if we're talking about J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, we need to say J.K. Rowling has written lots of books because she's still alive and can continue writing now. To sum everything up, if you're talking about an action which started in the past and there is the opportunity to change, develop or continue the action now, then we usually use the present perfect. However, if the action was in the past and is finished, we use past simple. So for example, I lived in London would be past simple. I have lived in London for 5 years is present perfect. Also, we went to Mount Etna yesterday, or J.K. Rowling has written lots of books. I strongly advise you to notice these verb tenses in different situations and notice how people use them in different contexts. If you do this, then your verb choices should become a lot more natural. As always, your questions and comments are very welcome. I look forward to seeing you next time.